Linux Mint has just published this month's report, and honestly, it's one of the most packed reports we've seen in a while. We have new HWE ISOs with Kernel 7, a completely new page for managing environment variables directly from the graphical interface, kernel management redesigned from the ground up, so you no longer have to remove anything manually, new FZX5 support with full parity between Wayland and X11, a new keyboard layout viewer, and much smoother interaction with the panel when working with full-screen windows. Stay until the end, because we're going through each point one by one, and the one about kernel management is definitely worth your attention. The first major highlight from this month's report is the release of a new set of HWE, or Hardware Enablement ISO images for Linux Mint 22.3. These images now come with Kernel 7, which means improved support for newer hardware, including recent graphics cards, new processors, network chips, and all kinds of peripherals that may not have been properly recognized by older kernels. For anyone unfamiliar with the concept, HWE ISOs are versions of the installation media that include a newer kernel and updated drivers specifically designed for users with newer computers where the hardware may not yet be fully supported by the standard kernel included with the base edition. So, if you have a recently purchased PC and you're experiencing problems with Linux Mint, such as your wireless network adapter not being detected or your display not working properly, the HWE version may be exactly what you need. If you want more details about this topic, or if you'd like to download these ISOs directly, the Mint team has provided a dedicated page on the official website. The link is available in the description of this video. Now let's move on to one of the features that I think will be particularly useful for advanced users, but also for anyone who wants to start exploring the system a little more deeply. The System Administration tool can now show or hide the boot menu and let you configure how long it remains visible before automatically booting the default option. On top of that, the tool has received a completely new page dedicated exclusively to managing environment variables. For those who aren't familiar with the concept, environment variables are sets of values that the operating system and applications use to determine how they should behave. For example, an environment variable can specify where certain programs are located, which language the interface should use, or which specific settings an application should apply when it starts. Until now, configuring these variables often required users to manually edit configuration files, usually from the command line, which could be intimidating for less experienced users. With the new page in the System Administration tool, this process becomes much more accessible. You can add, edit, or delete environment variables directly from a user-friendly graphical interface. One important detail to keep in mind is that the variables defined on this page are set at the system level, meaning they apply to all user sessions. This includes graphical sessions, the regular desktop sessions you use every day, as well as non-graphical sessions when you're working from a terminal. It may seem like a small feature at first, but it can significantly simplify the workflow for users who customize their systems or run scripts and applications that depend on these variables. Now we get to what I consider the most important change in this monthly report. Kernel management has been completely redesigned. Until now, this functionality was part of Update Manager, but the Mint team decided to remove it from there and rebuild it from the ground up, this time as part of the System Administration tool. What's really interesting is that this new implementation is designed to work with both Linux Mint and LMDE. The biggest change in philosophy here is that the new system focuses on kernel series rather than individual kernels as it did before. So what does that mean in practice? Instead of manually selecting which specific kernel versions you want to install or remove, you simply choose which kernel series you want to track, and the system takes care of the rest automatically. Kernel management has now become extremely simple. You choose which series you want to track and how many older kernels you want to keep on your system as a safety backup. From that point on, you'll automatically receive updates for the series you're tracking through Update Manager, while older kernels that exceed the number you've specified will be automatically removed by the system on a weekly basis. If you suddenly need some extra disk space and don't want to wait for the scheduled cleanup, you can manually trigger the cleanup process whenever you want, directly from the application's interface. Another very useful detail is the history button, which lets you see exactly which kernels were removed by the system and when it happened. I think this is a great feature for anyone who wants clear and transparent control over what's happening to their system. What happens if you install a kernel from an unknown or custom series that isn't part of the standard series recognized by Mint? Well, the team has thought about that scenario too. The tool will automatically detect and list that series and give you the option to mark it as tracked, just as you would with an official series. The monthly report even provides a concrete example, installing an OEM kernel and a real-time kernel. Both are examples of less common kernel series, but they're fully supported by this new system. There's an important distinction to keep in mind here. When you're tracking a known standard series, the tool automatically installs the appropriate meta packages and makes sure you'll continue receiving updates for that series without having to worry about it. However, when you're dealing with a custom series, the system doesn't automatically know how to manage updates for it. In that case, you'll receive a clear warning that keeping that kernel series up to date is entirely your responsibility. Here's another important point. If a particular kernel series isn't marked as tracked, all kernels installed from that series will be automatically removed during the next scheduled cleanup. That means if you've manually installed a kernel for testing and don't want it to be removed, you need to either mark its series as tracked or use another option that we'll discuss right now, kernel protection. For even more granular control, there's a View All Kernels button, which opens a complete list and allows you to install, remove, or protect individual kernels, one at a time, regardless of which series they belong to. And this brings us to a feature that I think advanced users will really appreciate. Kernel protection. When you mark a specific kernel as protected, it essentially becomes immune to the automatic cleanup process and will never be removed by the system, regardless of how many cleanup cycles take place or how many newer kernels are installed. This is exactly what you need if you have a specific kernel that you know works perfectly with your hardware and you don't want to risk losing it accidentally during an automatic cleanup. Overall, I think this redesign of kernel management is exactly the kind of change that demonstrates the maturity of the Linux Mint project. It keeps things simple for regular users who just want their system to work and stay up to date, while at the same time providing granular control and advanced options for those who need them. Now let's move on to another important area of improvements, this time related to keyboards and input methods. This is especially relevant for users who type in other languages or rely on alternative text input methods, such as those commonly used for Asian languages. Cinnamon now has support for FSIT X5, and more importantly, it offers full parity between Wayland and X11. For those who aren't familiar with it, FSIT X5 is a popular framework for input methods, especially for languages that require complex character conversion, such as Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, but also for other languages that use special character sets. There's an important technical detail here. When you select FSIT X5 in the input methods settings, Cinnamon no longer automatically launches IBIS daemon, which was the default solution used previously. Instead, the system now uses a different internal handler that allows you to define a single keyboard layout, while the rest of the functionality is fully delegated to FSIT X. In addition to this new FSIT X5 support, Cinnamon has also received a completely new keyboard layout viewer. This new tool replaces the old GNOME KBD viewer, which was officially discontinued by its developers. It's always a little unfortunate when an old and useful tool disappears, but it's also encouraging to see the Mint team react quickly and provide its own alternative natively integrated into Cinnamon rather than leaving this functionality missing. In the final part of the report, the team also mentions a few smaller improvements that may not sound particularly impressive. One of them is related to how we interact with the main panel when working with Windows in full screen mode. In the past, this interaction could sometimes feel a little clunky or inconsistent. According to this report, interacting with the panel in these situations is now much more natural and fluid. You can simply click on other panel components, close an open menu, open other applets, and all of these actions now work exactly as you'd expect. It contributes to that overall feeling of having a polished and well-refined system. It's clear, at least from my perspective, that the Linux Mint team continues to invest heavily in the user experience while also providing advanced control for those who want it without making things more complicated for regular users. Kernel management feels like a major change to me. It addresses a real problem that many users have faced. the accumulation of old kernels on their drives, and the lack of clear control over how that process is handled. Keep in mind that everything we discussed is still under development, so some details may change before the official release of the next version of Linux Mint. I recommend keeping an eye on the official blog for the latest updates. Thank you to all the channel members. Your support means a lot to me and helps keep the channel going. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more Linux Mint content, and let me know in the comments what you think about these new features. I'll see you in the next video.